this notion about share value.
Yes.
So the question around that is, why do you deem it necessary and important for agencies or for agency clients relationship to embrace the shared value principles?
Yeah. I think, firstly, a disclaimer, I did not, I wish I had, but I did not invent the principle of shared value. Right? The principle of shared value has existed for a while. What has absent in the world of advertising is a practical application of what shared value means in a creative context. That's the one thing I was looking for and I wasn't able to find. I'll preface that by saying that I believe fundamentally in creativity. A lot of people have heard me say that I dislike the agency model, which is true, but I believe fundamentally in creativity. I believe the intersection of creativity and technology is where the magic happens. And so when I started thinking about how I would go on a new journey within the investment that we made at the Brave Group, I was asked to lead the business and become the CEO. And then I had to ask myself the question, if I come from the mindset that I'm challenged by this business model, what is it that I'm going to do differently? Because I have to believe in it if I'm going to stand up and rally and get everybody in the organization to believe in it. So that was really the starting point. And when I did some soul searching and I started doing some research around applications of ways to ignite, inspire, and energize young people, I came across this idea around how do we interpret shared value into the advertising agency context. Now, for those of you that don't know, advertising in South Africa is a phenomenal industry, but there are a number of challenges with advertising in South Africa. Number one, it is probably one of the most untransformed industries, right? For the longest time, most people have chosen to try and find hacks around transformation than actually address the real issue of transformation. So if you look at the spend numbers, less than 3% of advertising marketing spend is going to agencies and businesses of color in South Africa, even as late as 2023. So it's a massive issue. Secondly, there isn't an incentive to transform. Right? The transformation story that has been sold from advertising and marketing has been a very, in my view, crass expression of you need to get black people to come and be in your business, which is probably the wrong premise if you're trying to drive for value. Thirdly, if you look at the way we are bringing new thinkers and new people into the world of advertising and marketing, the rate at which we're doing so is not sufficient to be able to drive diversity, right? So I looked at that, and I looked at the fact that I need to create a purpose and a vision for our agency. I considered myself and what I believe in, and I took this idea around shared value, and I interpreted that into our agency space. And we decided that we're going to be the shared value agency. Now, everybody asks, what does that mean? Because most agencies talk about creativity and they want to hang their hat on that kind of thing. But in our context, the ability to be a shared value agency is the deliberate pursuit of making the ecosystem better as a result of what we do within that ecosystem. The deliberate pursuit, right? Agencies are also very typically quite insular, right? They don't think about what the implication of what we do may be on the greater good. They don't think about that as a natural starting point. So we forced ourselves to think about the role that we play in the context of South Africa, in the context of advertising and marketing. As a result of that, we started to articulate very specific projects and initiatives that we thought would help us drive the shared value agenda. The first of which I mentioned was making sure that remuneration was aligned as close as possible to effort, right? With creatives, it's a funny thing. If I design this bottle over here, I'm going to think it's worth $1 million, but the market will pay 10 Rand for it. Creatives are very much like that. Once they produce something, they value it at far higher than the market is willing to pay. And so when we thought about how we solve that from a shared value point of view, we started to make sure remuneration periods were a lot shorter. So we created a quarterly incentive that said the work you've done this quarter will be remunerated accordingly. As a result of doing that, you get people very vested in making sure that they perform during that quarter. We created a performance management system, right? Funny enough, it's not a big thing in lots of creative agencies to manage performance. Why? Because there's a historic view that it's about people sitting around a table smoking some, whatever it is that they smoke and coming up with stuff, right? So performance management is not an art that has been translated into the agency space. So we created a performance management system that was fair. We then took that and we said, how do we use that as a base to be able to create very clear navigation paths for young people? So when a young person came into agencies, a junior copywriter, they got a very clear understanding of how they develop themselves in the agency and how they get to the next level. We created opportunities for young people to have platforms. So those are very practical ways we took this nebulous thing that is shared value. We looked at the context of advertising and marketing in South Africa, and we try to build a business that really helps us to articulate how we make the ecosystem better by contributing as a participant.